Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Music Business Mentorship. We're here with my very good friend Omar Zehery from Rustgaze Records in Lima, Ohio. And we're going to talk about a bunch of things today. But first of all, let me just start off by saying thank you, Omar, for being here, taking time out of your busy schedule and talking to us about your music business. Why don't we just start off with telling me who you are? Tell everybody what you do and how you got started.
Yeah, man. Well, first off, thank you for having me on here, and thank you for just right off the bat, thank you for your help for the last few years, and just kind of, I think a cool way of getting this kicked off is maybe talking about, uh, you know, not to put you on the spot or like embarrass you, but how gracious you were the first time we met, and just getting a cold call out of the blue. But I remember finding out about you like on social media. A mutual friend was like, I need a lawyer. Like you're like, what's up? Like getting like in the comments, and I'm like, well, that's cool. Like, this dude seems pretty legit. And I remember checking out your stuff and was like, wait, this gentleman's an attorney. He is a musician, he's a sound guy, he's a light dude, and he's involved in like nonprofit like stuff for like all of the arts. I was like, what the heck? Like where have you been all of our lives kind of thing? And took a nice drive down from Lima to Cincinnati, and you hung out. I remember having my little Bluetooth speaker, and I was like playing you songs. I was like, no, listen to this one, man. Now listen to this one. And you're very gracious and cool about your time. And I've just been given some great advice to us ever since. So just wanted to thank you, and say it's been really cool hanging out.
Dude, it's totally my pleasure. I can't stress that enough. I mean, you bring a lot to the table, man. You've got a lot of creative ideas. You're working with great people. You've got great energy. There's really something special that's happening there in that studio, and everything you've got going on with from the block parties to the collaboration you've got with the comic book store up front and everything. I mean, it's a scene that I want to be a part of. I just wish we were a little bit closer together, you know?
Yeah,
But
man.
yeah,
No,
it's
we'll get there. We'll get there. We
yeah.
can I feel like transportation what is it, teleportation is like right like around the corner. So yeah, we can kind of bridge that gap and make Lima and Cincinnati more sister cities than they are.
I mean, they should be. They really should be.
Well, I'll tell you, man, Cincinnati was like one of the first big cities that like me and my buddies started going to for shows. And like I would steal my mom's car and be like, "Hey, I'm going to Dave's house." You met Dave
Yeah, I
right
did
outside the
meet Dave.
door, right?
Yeah.
I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna go over to Dave's house," and then we would go to Bogart's, and then like the car would get towed, and I have to call my mom and be
Oh
like,
man.
"I'm not at Dave's house." I'm in
Uh,
Cincinnati with your car, and it's towed. I'm sorry. But no, that was Cincinnati's always been like a very important town for us. And Lima, there really hasn't there wasn't much going on when I was a kid, you know. And I think that all of this kind of stems from that, where it's like I can't wait to meet people that are into the same freaky stuff that I'm into, that like we can hang and make stuff that like we all really kind of believe in. And that's kind of what the philosophy was growing up, was like, I can't wait to get the hell out of here. And like was lucky to kind of get out and realize that home is what you make it. And all the things that I used to look at this area for as being like detrimental to what I wanted to do, like I realized like now this is like an opportunity, because there are people that are into the weird stuff that we're into and nerding out, like and the type of stuff that we're nerding out. You just kind of have to find them. And yeah, it's been really cool just you know kind of creating something with people that believe in the same things that we do. So
Well, how did you get started in your musical journey? I mean, I can totally identify, first of all, with the wanting to get out of here. I mean, Cincinnati, when you're a kid, feels like it's the biggest small town and you just want to run to the big city. But then you get to New York or LA and you're like, holy crap, I can't play that many gigs this in a weekend. It takes an hour to get anywhere. Like I just can't do what I can do in my hometown. And
Yeah.
so and it's just funny that Lima is like on that 2 hour radius where I tell people all the time to create, an hour to 2 hour strategy of building your fan base. And Lima is right there. And you've got now a studio, a stage, block parties, you've got all these collaborators. But how did all that kind of start for you? I mean, you were in a band and Dave, I
Yeah.
think, was in that band, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like we got started young, like finding our own like in middle school and stuff, and like, then playing music together through high school. Um, I was putting on shows in my parents' basement. I met, future bandmates by like dudes that were just like walking through my kitchen, like kind of giving my parents the what's up, like, and they'd be like, those guys? Like, no, not really, but they're here, so that's cool. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of, that's how it started. And, out of high school, made the decision, it's like, okay, I think that, at this point, we kind of know what it would take to get up to like a next tier, which is just out of town, like that was our biggest goal. Um, and formed this band with guys I grew up with. And, it was kind of the intention was known early. It was like, all right, if we dedicate ourselves to this, then we can see this come through the other side. And I mean, this was now, like 20 years ago, which is a completely different beast than it is today. Because back then, you know, for us to build little pockets of fan bases across the US, you had to jump in a van. And if you didn't have the representation, then, it was like, okay, we're booking our own shows. We are releasing our own material. We are making our own merchandise. We are like managing ourselves and our career. But everybody like knew what was going into it. And it wasn't like one of us carrying the rest. It was like everybody firing all cylinders. Um, Quitting school, quitting work, really just kind of unplugging from the lives that we had here to jump in a van and do that. And, we were self-booking maybe like 9 months out of the year, with those other couple months, not like, a week here, a week there. And, you know, doing that for a few years.
And
Um,
let me just interrupt you real quick. So if our listeners are checking out Omar's page and everything, you can actually check out Hit the Lights. It's you can find them on Wikipedia. You can find them on all the streaming services. Um, you guys have I'm checking out how many records there's from 2006 to 2015. You were putting out stuff pretty regularly, looks like, and
yeah, yeah,
EPs from 2004 all the way up to 2018. Looks like you put out a single in 2018.
yeah.
So Hit the Lights was the name of the band, right?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, man, it's like we just kind of we knew that we were gonna have to dedicate ourselves to it, but also it's like this was like what we wanted. So I mean, like touring down to Florida in the middle of summer in a van with no AC and no place to sleep. So like Walmart parking lots, like, really having to like rely like on the kindness of strangers and like, that kind of thing. Like, I think that we all knew it's like, okay, this is what it takes to kind of get through to like the other side. And with kind of 3 years of that kind of really dedicated time spent to that, we started finding labels that we grew up listening and loving, like hitting us up and, having conversations with these names on the backs of CDs that we've been looking at for years and stuff, and putting faces to names like on CD jackets. And it was really cool. Like getting to play with bands that, you know, we grew up loving and like, you know, inspiring us, and really being able to check off, you know, boxes of goals that, like, you know, we wanted to accomplish, and just doing it out of this place called Lima, Ohio. You know, like, so we did that for a few years, and you know, the like was it Summer of '69? Is that like the one that's like Bobby got married and like, you
Yeah,
know, like
yeah, right,
talking about,
right, yeah.
right? Was
Yeah, it's
that like
Brian Adams. Yeah,
Brian Adams? That's kind of how it happened, you know, like we had a good run, and then you start getting older, and like, you know, one of my favorite things in the whole time that we did Hit the Lights was the recording and hanging out and the creation and us getting in a room and, you know, loving a riff and turning that into like something that's like, okay, now this is a song, you know, this is so I always really appreciated that thing. We did some really cool like production hangs and co-write hangs in LA with, you know, again, people that I never would have thought I'd be like in the room with, like when I was a kid. And a lot of those people are like, hey, like you've got like these really great ideas, like you should think about production. And in my head at that time I was like, I'm a road dog, you know what I mean? Like there's no, like I can't figure out what all those buttons on a console does. Like, you know, I just play my guitar and write songs and, you know, like tour. And but that kind of gave me a goal, a target to kind of shoot for, after, you know, I was able to kind of have time to focus on that. So when the band started to slow down, I came back home to Lima, started bartending, and through that started kind of being acquainted with the local music scene again. And, you know, very based in bar bands and cover bands, but a lot of the, you know, the kids that were out there gigging those kind of cover bands and cover acts, and like were also songwriters, and, you know, would slip in their original tunes in between covers, and I'd ask them, be like, you know, who is that, what is that? It's like, oh, it's something I wrote. Like, what are you gonna do with it? You know, like, and the most, you know, everybody's like, well, I don't know, just continue to play it for people, you know, like with their backs turned, and, you know, drinking beer and eating chicken wings over like the music that we're making. It's like, nah, that's no way to live. So, you know, that's kind of when the vision kind of started coming together for, you know, this little room that I started developing with, you know, just really menial recording gear. And the thing that I noticed about with like the people that I was meeting and booking was like, you know, how is it that you're doing this? You're writing this, you're writing this, and you guys have never gotten in the same room, like done it together. And it was real kind of like small potatoes type stuff that was just like local drama. That guy took my Thursday gig type thing. Like, you know, it's like, nah, like you got to think bigger. And started using the studio as a space for these different musicians to kind of come in and collaborate. And just right off the bat, it was just kind of undeniable. And I kind of saw it just all come together because I was like, everybody knew about my past in, you know, touring and traveling. And they're like, so when is it time for us to blow this popsicle stand? And that's like when it's like, you don't, you know, like you stay here, develop your thing. Like you're obviously great at X, Y, and Z, but maybe like there's some stuff that like you do need to work on. And let's figure out what that is together. And so that when, you know, you go to a place like Nashville or New York or LA or even Cincinnati or Columbus, like there are people waiting for you, you know, like you've done the work, they know who you are. And for me too, is kind of the selfish thing because I just like wanted, you know, I didn't want these people to leave. Like, you know, like, and then like I realized, I was like, no, this is like a bigger problem. This is like brain drain. This is, you know, realizing that different towns that are of our size that are, you know, at risk of losing bright young people are actually doing something about it. So that's kind of where this, intention shifted to kind of poking the finger in the chest of people that, should be hanging on and nurturing this kind of talent, to like create an environment that people want to come to, like when you Google Lima, Ohio, unfortunately, the worst things come up. So like if I'm talking to somebody in economic development or the Chamber of Commerce, and they're like, well, how do you see this going? I'm like, flood the algorithm with young people doing awesome stuff, like people of all ages, people of all like, like when you do that, it's like you shift the this like mentality. And especially if you're trying to, what's like the lingo that they use, like improve the quality of life and yada yada. Really, it's like they want young talent, like young professional people to come and fill up these positions for whatever industries that we have here. But it's like, what's going to really entice you about uprooting you and your family to come to Lima, Ohio? Like, so that's, where this thing kind of like, we realize it's like, okay, this is like more than just recording some songs. It's like, this is, being able to plant a flag in the ground for a place that, hasn't had a lot of pride in itself for years, like a lot of Midwestern towns that are kind of living that same thing. But other places our size and smaller are figuring out how to do it, So it's like, if we're catching up now, then we're already behind. So what are you going to do about it? Because this is what I'm doing, like I'm providing nonprofit creative development for these area artists that like really have a chance of, not only being able to make a living off their creativity, but like plant a flag in the ground for this area. So that's, really like we're lucky to know the people that we know, because they're the ones that like make it easy to do the work, because it doesn't feel like work. I know that you know that, right? It's like when you're hanging out with somebody, it's like we're accomplishing things, we're being like, very efficient, and we're doing something special, but like because we're doing it out of like love and respect, it's like, we're just hanging out and doing cool shit.
Yeah.
So that's in a nutshell, that's what we've been doing in Lima, is hanging out with cool people, developing stuff. The studio turned into, we all of a sudden we had like a collective of people, and they, are hanging out on each other's stuff through mutual love and like respect, building things. And we just had this like undeniable pile of songs. It's like, now what? And it's like, well, like let's start a record label. We've been throwing shows, we've been, promoting these artists in this like local and regional sense, really shifting the perception of what homegrown art is in an area like this, changing people's perceptions, like putting music up front instead of in the background, putting it on in such like a small room that you can't deny, like this thing in front of you. And when you see that, it's like, this weird feedback loop of excitement, because the crowd feeds the music and like the musicians, and then the musicians play better, and like they get the crowd more excited. And it's like stuff that was so natural for me that, I just, people weren't experiencing here. So we were able to do that. And then it's like, well, let's take this party as far as it can go. So started Rustgaze Records, and have been just kind of chugging along, putting out records, just figuring it out one step at a time. And that's kind of where we are right now.
Let me tell our listeners, when I met Omar, the studio was actually upstairs in the back of a building that really the upstairs hadn't been used for much in quite a while. The bottom part of it had kind of a coffee shop and co-working space, and the owner of the building was trying to foster co-working and all sorts of stuff. So it was sort of a perfect synergy for you to kind of get started. But you were already in talks with the folks who own the Legacy Arts building and their comic book shop, and they had big dreams for the use of the space, and you were already starting to throw shows in the back of their space. And now you've got kind of a full-time studio in the building. There's a comic book shop up front, there's a little bar, there's a nice little area for a show, a nice stage in the back. There's a park along the side of the building, and it's it's kind of like right in the heart of downtown Lima. So, and you throw a street party that encompasses all of this stuff. So real amazing synergy. I want to know, like, what has been the feedback from the civic leaders in the community, as to everything that you're doing? Because you're a linchpin of all of this creative entrepreneurship.
Yeah, man. No, I mean, we're lucky to have the partners that we do that kind of, believe in the same kind of crazy stuff that, that we really believe in. And, again, it's about changing perception in a town like this. So, there are people that like listen kind of suspiciously, and they're just kind of, head tilted kind of thing. Like, like, I don't know exactly if I understand, but like, and then there are people that are like, hell yes, like know exactly where we're coming from. And, that's really the support that's led us to continue has been more from like the public than like the civic leaders that are there, like
Yeah.
there are some, like I said, there are some people that get it, and then there are some that I feel that are just kind of biding their time until, you know what I mean, upholding some status quo until they're out, and like, our hope is that whoever comes in next, is willing to pay attention, willing to, hang with some ideas that they wouldn't necessarily like, think of themselves or think as being like, something worth trying out. But for us, it's like I said, it's the partners that we have. It's, we've got great partners at, our Lima Memorial Civic Center here in town, that saw it early on and was like, what can we do to help? And as you know, that's like gold to somebody that's like feeling like they're like treading water, or like, you know what I mean? Like fighting this uphill battle. Um, Same thing with Art Space Lima and Greater Council, our Council of the Arts, Greater Lima. Um, our partners here at Legacy Arts, same way. Like you mentioned, the fact that the studio was in this abandoned office space, right? And it was above this coffee shop. And I don't even think that they knew exactly what we were doing up there. For like, like it was probably like a few months until like I was like, hey, do you want to come check out the space? And they're like, oh, like, this is what's going on up here. So that trust, from business owners here in this town that has extra space that aren't doing stuff with it, that's the type of thing that like we're trying to cultivate with, Legacy Arts and Legacy Arts building, and this collective of like-minded people, being able to pool their resources and their love for art and music and cool things to happen, like, so I really see this as being, a beacon, some kind of magnet that's, here to draw in people that are just as weird as we are and the same stuff. So but yeah, Mark and Angie Boker that own this building and they have Alter Ego Comics, they were some of those people early on. It's like, what's going on? What are you doing? Like what, like how are you going to grow this? And they were some of the first people that I could be like, what's a business plan? And how do you do an Excel sheet? Like, so they were always very supportive of it. And, just kind of everything fell into place for us to be able to have this over here. And, it wouldn't have started without putting together this little like PDF document of what things could look like, like this packet of information that was just growing and growing and showing people. And my wife and I, like, we love going out of town, seeing places, where it was, this similar kind of like teamwork in a culture that we appreciate, and being like, why can't we have that in Lima? Like there's no reason like that, we just can't do it ourselves and find people that want to do it with us. So we're really lucky for that.
Now tell me about your logo, because I really think it's awesome. It's in the background of your screen there, so I can kind of see, and it looks like Ohio across the top. But when you first described it to me, I was like, "Oh, that's genius."
Yeah.
So, what prompted that?
So this I was on tour with Hit the Lights, and we were in the UK, and it was after a show, and we're hanging out at a pub, and I'm chatting with this guy that's like talking about, the reason why some of the best music in the world comes out of England and like the UK is because it's so damn like gray and dreary and like industrial and like, and he's like, of course, like that's, inspiration and, it's like comes from the environment. So Sabbath and Birmingham and like the Smiths from Manchester, like, Nottingham or like whatever. He's like, mentioning like Liverpool and like the Beatles. And that got me thinking, because that was like, this realization of like, yeah, it's like true. It's like, your environment really um can shape your creativity. And I was always like wondering, how was it that like these people from this area were like had this thing that was just like this charged creativity, and it was like, that's what it is. It's like, we're kind of all looking at it. In Lima, it doesn't matter like where you are. You could be in like the prettiest part of town, and like the refinery is like, this flame that's kind of like the watchful eye of God. Like, like,
Sauron.
yes, yeah, like everywhere that you go is just kind of like there and like reminding you. And it's like, yeah, so it's like, it's like a take like on shoegaze, but it's like, we're just gazing at all these things rusting around us, but it's like taking responsibility for it and like, really like, acknowledging the fact that that's where this grit comes from, and this honesty and this genuineness that I feel goes into, a lot of people's brains and eyes subconsciously, but they're people that know how to take that and make something beautiful out of it. So
Well, you truly are making something beautiful out of it. I love your studio space. And last time I was there, I heard some great stuff. Tell me about some of the artists that you're recording and some of the projects that you've got coming out.
no, dude, there's not enough time in the day. And it's so exciting too, because it's like, it's like the mentality is like, I got all the friends I need kind of thing. But then like I meet people and it's just like, oh my God, like maybe if I just stop sleeping, like there'll be enough time in the day to like hang and get the work done. But yeah, I mean, honestly, so shout out to Kevin Ashba, who was hanging out here last time when you dropped by. He's got a new single coming out early November called Elevated. So you can find that at rustgazerecords.com, or let's search for Rustgaze Records and any social media to find the pre-save link for that. Jasmine Gore, who is an incredible singer-songwriter who grew up in the area and is living now in New York, but she made it here the other month, and we were able to like lay down some new stuff. That was that samba track that I showed you like when we were hanging out. DL Burden Davey is uh one of the people not from this area. He's an Englishman. You call him the Duke of Sunderland, but he is down in Dayton, and we met through some mutual friends, and we were talking. He's like, yeah, like I used to tour around. I was like, oh, cool. Like, anybody, who'd you play with? He's like, oh, this band called Leatherface. And I was like, the leather, like I grew up, like I had that 7-inch and like yada yada. And he's like a new friend that like, we've made in the last few years that feels like somebody that we've known all our lives, like. So we put out a full length with him and our really good friend Craig, who played drums on that record, who plays in this awesome band from Toledo called Shitty Neighbors. Incredible punk band, one of my favorite bands right now. Logan Ross was like our flagship record, and kind of how, a lot of this really like formulated was like him being kind of stuck in this like writer's block rut. And I was like, all right, dude, we're just going to like record everything that you have. We're going to put it out, and that's going to open up all this mental space for you for new ideas, like this is, and that was the first record that we put out. and, recorded in an abandoned office space, with no ventilation, no plumbing, like, um, yeah. And we're hanging out with, new artists right now. Incredible songwriter from this area. His name is McCartney Robinson. We just had like first little studio hang where it's like, all right, show me what you got, kid. And he's like, going through 10, 12 songs, and like all of them, it's like, yeah, no, I get it. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Saving this idea for last, that it was just like, it's like you're sitting there, like you don't want to jump in, maybe like just too quick. And then it's like this last idea is like, all right, we got to hang with this right now. And came up with this really cool live demo, just like, in a, maybe like an hour and a half hang, like. So those are the types of people that like we, just love hanging out with. And, you know, people especially, like when they come in here and they're just like, oh wow, it's like they're thinking about what this can do kind of for themselves. But the people that like we like really gravitate to are the ones that see that this is like this collaborative ecosystem. It's like, what can I do for somebody else? And like when somebody comes in here with like that kind of attitude, it's like you weren't going anywhere, like you were saying right here. So it's cool to hang with people like that. Caitlin Schmidt is another performer from this area that we've been hanging out in the studio with, and like figuring out songs and working on tunes and stuff together. So it's yeah, it's incredible, man. I mean, there's so many talented people here that there's not enough hours in the day to uh to do the work. But I feel like that's like when you do show up and you've got the time together to do it, it's like getting it done. And it's a very focused thing that's like getting more and more concise. And hopefully that just kind of continues that way, love
What
to
I
just be able to figure out that efficiency thing. And but when you were kind of doing everything here in house, it's like, I have to really remind myself to be patient sometimes. So it's all good problems to have. So
Well, I love how you describe recording sessions as a hang with the artist, and I get that vibe when I'm in that room. And being somewhat of a fan of gear and studio equipment, I love the quality of preamps, the quality of mics that you have, and I like the sound of the room. And I also like that it's so comfortable that you as a producer give the artist the feeling that they are just there for a hang. They're not, it's not like there's this red light that pops on them that like you're now on the clock and start recording.
yeah. Yeah.
On the flip side of that, though, you were mentioning efficiency, and I'm wondering how Rustgaze is evolving to meet the needs both of your community but also yourself. I mean, I think one of the hardest things for people in the music business, it's a very difficult business to be in because you either are selling yourself on the stage, or you're selling coffee, or you're selling beer, or you're selling tickets, right? Or you're selling studio time. But how do you transition to, this is my full-time gig and I have to balance the needs of like my artistic spirit that I want to do this project, but I know this person doesn't have a whole lot of money, or the people that, you may not be as jazzed about what they're producing, but they walked in with cash and
Yeah.
you've got to pay the bills. So how do you as a producer and as a business owner manage that?
I'm the worst person to talk to about this because you probably ask my wife about this too, because she's like, when are you going to take some of those cash paying gigs? No, it's that balance is a very it's a tricky thing, and it's definitely a very important thing. It's like whether you are in my position or whether you are an artist coming in here to do that thing. Um, Going back to what you were saying about the environment, kind of created in here. Thank you for saying that, because I've been the kid on the other side working with people, and I've worked with people whose attitudes are like it's my way or the highway, and just kind of built this separation between like you and them kind of thing. And I've worked with people who are like the exact opposite, that kind of come in and become a member of the band, or like I said, somebody that like you feel like you've known all like your life. And to be, to really be able to, I think, express yourself in an honest way, you kind of have to let your guard down, like you can't be thinking about, you know being honest, and also like, I guess like worrying about all these external things at the same time, like while you're trying to put down a performance that's going to get captured, so to make that environment, um for me, I want to do it first and foremost because I know what it takes. And then also too, we're hanging with people that it's easy to have that relationship with. And I think that that's why, I'm selfish in terms of, the limited amount of people that I work with. And I'm also kind of stupid for like not taking the cash stuff that like would probably pay. And so in those instances, I'm the last person to ask about that. So um but that's why, you met our great partner David Entine, who's the businessman who allows me to be, kind of thinking more with the heart than the brain. But he's thinking with the brain sometimes, and it's like, it's a nice compliment to each other of like, not it's not even compromise, it's like just it's communication, and it's, being able to see both sides of this weird coin that we're kind of developing. So
It's interesting because whenever we meet, where I'm kind of wearing my lawyer hat, I know that your wife is in the room and Dave was in the room,
yeah.
and so it's like, okay, I know that there's a team, but it's really great to speak to the heart of that team because I love your creative spirit, and I know that you understand the artist side of it, and I think that's what makes the producer artist relationship really special. I think you're eliciting a good performance because you want you want that genuineness, you want the raw and the real. And I think if I'm paraphrasing a little bit of what you're saying, is allowing the business manager to handle some of the bookings and the financial side, and allowing your wife a role in strategy and thinking about it in terms of financials, then kind of frees you up to be the artist and producer artist that you are. Is that a good summary
That
of
is
the
it,
team?
it very yes, like. And I think that that same kind of worry that we try to lift from like the artists, it's like important to do that across the board, like when you are lucky to have a team like that with people that you can trust and realize what people's strengths are, and realize, how to complement each other. So I mean, it's the same thing that goes with having, managers, booking agents, attorneys, like you don't, you don't want to be some kind of afterthought or back burner like on anybody's thing. You want, everybody to be showing up with mutual love and respect, because that's the only way that you're going to inch something that seems like impossible, forward. So
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that because I think a lot of people who are checking out this podcast for the first time or checking out the music business mentorship are really wondering, how is it possible to do what we do? How can we transition to a full time of making a living from our creativity? And it's a real journey, and there's no one easy answer. And the more people that I talk to on this podcast, the more experiences I have as an attorney for artists and musicians, the more I realize there's just not one way, and everything is always changing. So sometimes it feels like you have to be everywhere doing everything all at once. And I know the kind of burnout that can cause. So let me ask you, how do you deal with that side of it? How do you deal with self-care and making sure that you can renew your creative spirit and feel like this impossible task that you get up to do every day is worth doing?
Yeah, no, for sure, man. Like, I mean, it sounds so cheesy, but it's like, if you can take care of yourself and, you know, your thoughts and your emotions and all of like things that kind of can become hurdles when you're taking on something like this, then it does free up a lot of RAM and like a lot of like, energy to get stuff done. So I mean, it's like so important. And I wish I would have known this when I was a kid, like, but I think like when you're young, like you're full of like, the piss and the vinegar that will keep you going through like whatever. But I mean, it's like so important to be able to unplug, to be able to, like eat right, sleep right, meditate, like, have something outside of the thing that you're constantly thinking about that can like take you away from it a little bit. And, that's really what, that along with like, the luck that we have working with the people that we do, because like I said, again, it's not like I'm clocking in, and like, but you are burning mental energy and you are burning physical energy. So it's like, having to remind myself that sometimes when like the days get long or things are like, you look at the calendar and it's like, man, there's no, there's no day on here that doesn't have a dot, which is a blessing sometimes, it's ultimately a blessing. But no, I think, just being able to unplug and recharge your batteries is just so important. So
I've mentioned
eat your
this.
vegetables,
Yeah.
get some rest, like church on Sundays, whatever it takes.
Well, I mentioned this to you, I think, when we last spoke, and I've mentioned it quite a bunch lately. Bob Weir gave a series of interviews in 2022, I think, about and it was like to Men's Health and GQ about how he's able to maintain his long-term career, and it was meditation, working out, and dedicating himself to a sense of purpose. And I think you've kind of perfectly encapsulated all of that. You've kind of maximized your skills and talents, dedicating yourself to a purpose that's, yes, a studio, and yes, it's to these artist careers, but it's also to the greater Lima community and to all of, bringing a vibrant downtown and creating a creative class and creative culture there in a city that otherwise would be just staring at the rust, gazing at the rust, so to speak. So I think it's amazing. I think what you're doing is like the wizards of old, man. You're like the one bringing the magic to the town.
Friggin' dude, it's alchemy. It really is, man. It's something out of nothing, and it's like shoot, there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. And it's cool because, get to meet cool people like you. We get to, get together and talk about things that like we love and how to, you know, help people do the thing that they love. Like get out of town, man. Like we won the lottery, like it's
Yeah. Yeah, definitely blessed. Absolutely. Well, and I want to just say one more time how much I love everything that I've heard coming out of your studio. So that's a real testament to having good ears, having talent, having gear that you know how to use. And I don't want people to think that they have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to get a really good mic preamp, but I don't think you have anything that you don't need. I think you have
yeah.
what you need. I don't think it's cluttered or I think you get a really good sound and you elicit some really good performances. And that's a testament to you. How did you develop that skill to use the gear to, I mean, you were a road dog, and how did you
Yeah.
transition to be a studio guy?
Um, garage band and like, getting getting a Mac early on was like this understanding of, looking at a console and not seeing like a million buttons, but just being like, oh, okay, this is what EQ is, this is what compression is, this is, what saturation is. And to be done in this very kind of Fisher Price kind of way that GarageBand is able to offer you, but it's able to do the exact same thing as like Pro Tools, or what I mean? Like obviously there's different, things like that. But like on the technical sense, it was really YouTubing stuff. It was, getting, like tutorial videos and hanging out in the van and figuring out what, Ableton is made out of and Logic is made out of. But on the more holistic sense of, songwriting and stuff, it was just really being able to hang out with, some really talented people that were very generous about their information and like their knowledge. And I think that it's weird because it's like this, um not it's this combination of this technicality, but also, I mean, kind of woo woo too, of like trying to like, how do you have a conversation with somebody, and allow, some honesty to come through, whether it's in like lyric writing or like a performance and stuff. It's like you can't YouTube that, I don't think, like, so the microphones and like, like the mixing stuff, like that's all, that information's out there, but it's also, you know, um, this place it's everything from like the studio to like, you know, a therapist couch to being like, party room to, it's like kind of like all across the board. But yeah, and I've just been listening to music since I was a kid, so you know I know what I like. And I try to get the most. It would be very easy for me to like take songs that are coming in here and like, kind of throw them in the direction that I think that they should go. But like there's this communication that I love of, talking to somebody about what the vision is and how do we reach this target together, you know? So it's like you have to have some foundation of a vision where we know that we're going somewhere together. And then, if not, then it's like, cool, let's see what happens. Let's take this where it can kind of, like maybe sometimes that doesn't necessarily have to be the case and we'll get there together. But yeah, it's fun, man. It's cool learning a piece of gear and like you acquire something and now all of a sudden like everything's, feels like it's better. Like, like, so that stuff's fun. But it's also very addictive. So you have to be careful.
Yeah, don't get gear acquisition syndrome.
Oh
I,
my God.
I had a producer mentor of mine tell me it's not how many plugins you have, it's how many completed songs you have that
Exactly.
matters.
Exactly, dude. Like, I think that when we were talking kind of a little bit about what you're doing with this mentorship program and stuff, it's like, there's the business side of it, but there's also like this other side too, like of, you know, how do you become efficient and how do you explain to people too that there is this business side, like one of my favorite books, I'm sure that you've hung with that, Real Artists Don't Starve. And like, I love the concept of like really trying to like squash the notion of like the starving artist, right? And for me, I think I gave myself those excuses before, but it's like, you know in terms of like putting in the time and taking your craft seriously and sharpening and honing like your skills, and there's something within us that, you know, I think that human nature, it's like, well, I can never be that person. I can never like do that. But I think that if you at least have like enough belief in yourself to put in the hour of the day, then that will, in the course of a few weeks, you see that you're able to finish those songs, like you see that you're able to kind of like have this thing. So I think what you're doing is great, man. I feel like it's going to help a lot of people, and whatever we can do to help, please let us know, because I'd love to be a part of the journey.
I really appreciate that. Certainly, I think you hit on a lot of really good things there. Number one, you said, learning to have a conversation and learning. I think learning to have a conversation is a real art form. I think not thinking of the things that you want to say while they're talking, letting someone speak, I think that makes you a better producer. And the fact that you mentioned that means you're hearing what they're giving you, what they're saying, what they're expressing with their song before you decide. It's like someone who gets a plate of food from a chef and then immediately puts salt on it before they've even tasted it. You have this projection of what it is. And if you're doing that, then you're not really hearing what it is or what it could be. So I think that as a producer, that's an amazing skill. But I also think you touched on something that I just realized as we were talking, and that's one of the benefits of this podcast, is being able to talk at length about the process. When you're an artist, and certainly I've spent a lot of time behind the fretboard. I'm trying to teach myself piano now, and I'm exploring different YouTube tutorials, and I've got some apps, and I've always loved the piano, and I love it for theory stuff, but I'm not good enough on the piano to go out and sing and play a show on keys. I can play all night long on guitar, bass, maybe saxophone on a few tunes. I can play a number of different instruments, but to sit there and like get my hands to really learn a piece of music, it's hard, especially as an adult, to kind of put yourself in that. I've got to put the 10,000 hours in. But I think that the transition that's so hard for artists is that you've spent so much time doing something that, by all accounts, by other people's metrics, is not generating revenue. It's not generating anything. It's generating self-improvement.
Yeah.
And it's not even like working out where, you can see the muscle tone. It's building muscles that can't be seen. It's building an expression and a skill set that isn't immediately causing gratification or your financial gain. So artists are so used to doing something that gives them self improvement for no money that then they get into a habit of doing things for no money. And real artists don't starve. That's a great book, a great quote. And ultimately, if you understand that what you're doing is you're perfecting your craft, like the craft of songwriting, getting up and working at it every day, not waiting for inspiration to strike you, but to work at it, to build so that you can then have something to offer, and then creating that exchange between your fan base and your wallet. You're giving yourself, but you've got to create a space for them, your fans, to give back to you, to sustain this thing.
Exactly. So it's like, I talk to people that have like the notion, and it's like, okay, if you can like realize that you, like, on whatever like level of talent or skill set or like whatever, you still possess something that like allows you to have like an output of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And a lot of people don't have that, right? Like, you see people walking around and they're just like, oh, like, it's because like they don't have this. It's a blessing, really. Like, so if you can think about it like that, then it's not like, oh, I have to sit down and do this. Like, I get to do this, and I've got some interest in doing this,
Right.
And when you put that time in as an artist, as a songwriter, as like a musician, ultimately, like, you're figuring what is the most genuine expression of yourself, and how do I get better at that? How do I get better at defining my thoughts and my feelings, whether it's through lyrics, melodies, riffs, like pieces. So, that thing should, it should feel like playing more than it should feel like working, right? But then after like you've let this thing out of you, right? yeah, then kind of this responsibility for that kind of takes place, where it's like, okay, do I just let this sit on a hard drive? You know, it's like these different levels. The first thing is like getting it off your chest, getting it off your back. Then the second level is figuring out, how do I find a community of people that aren't like, you're not looking at them like fans or like walking $20 bills. It's like, hopefully like-minded people that are going to recognize what it is that you're doing. And like that first layer of like, getting the thing out, to the second layer of finding somebody that can like absorb that thing, and then maybe it helps them in a way. Or even if it's a party jam with friends, and it's like setting the tone for like you know a really nice time, if it's like something like that, like if it's helping somebody with a problem, if it's like that kind of thing, it's like, if you can look at it like that, it's not like it doesn't feel like slimy to like sell yourself, like, because you're not. It's like, how do you find like-minded people that are going to understand what it is that you're doing? And when you can connect with people like that on that level, and then it builds in the most natural way, and that's a hard thing to explain to people. It's a hard thing for me to do too, like when I'm like online and like thinking about social media and stuff, like, but I also see people that are doing it in this very cool, honest way. And I think that, like when we're talking about people, talking to people that we work with, it's like, you know to be able to build a base of supporters, you have to engage with them. So part of your work is figuring out, how do you do that in an honest way that doesn't feel icky,
Yeah,
Like,
that aligns with your values. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. And I think that that's just as important as putting in the time of the whatever your skill is, like whether it's songwriting or guitar playing or like producing anything, like um so it's like, I mean, I love Stephen Pressfield. I love War of Art. Did I say that one right? I always get the Art of War. Yeah, War of Art, right? Yeah. um because there's like that thing that's like, okay, there's time to be like creative, and to like let the muses visit you and for you to like do it. And then like there's like, like the editing sense, and there's also like this whole other side of like, what are you going to do with that time that you just like had this output, and we're able to shape it. Now you have, I think, for lack of a better term, once it kind of gets to this like packaged thing, it's kind of a product now, right? Like,
Yeah.
but this is birthed from you. This is birthed from your thoughts, from your feelings and like your emotions. So it's like, how do you continue to ship? How do you
Yeah.
like,
Well, there's a couple of different examples from the sort of the upper echelon of music that I've seen that really kind of inspire me. And one is the story that it's in the History of the Eagles documentary, where Glenn Fry is talking about living above Jackson Browne. And I didn't know how to write songs, he says. And then I heard every morning at 9 a.m., Jackson would sit at the piano and I'd hear him bang out the first verse. And every day he would, do that for an hour, and then he'd make some tea, and then he'd go work the first verse into the second verse, and he'd play it 20 times and maybe make some slight changes, and then he'd do it again. And that sort of grind is something that I think it gets a little lost in the creative process. People don't always think about how hard it is to kind of come up with something that's really amazing. But then there's the other thing, and that's sort of aiming at your higher purpose. I watched a documentary that David Letterman went to Ireland to meet with Bono and the Edge, and they did a little performance and a reimagining of their songs, and it was sort of the start of what became Bono's autobiography. And then he did a solo show at the Beacon Theater. But watching them talk about how did this whole thing come about, and really they went through a real crisis of faith. They were trying to talk about religion without talking about religion. They were trying to live up to their ideals in a time of war between Northern Ireland and the British, and the, just a real time of trouble. And they felt like, what is their higher purpose? And some people told them to give up music because they thought it was frivolous. They said this rock and roll thing is not
Yeah.
cool. But then they sort of, the way that they characterized it in this David Letterman documentary was that they kind of stumbled upon this song, the Bloody Sunday song, that really kind of took everything they had been doing and coalesced it into kind of a mission. And you
Yeah.
can see, I mean, Bono took that and has run with it, probably to the annoyance of some of his bandmates at times.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's amazing to see a group of people dedicate themselves to a higher purpose using their skills and talents to the best of their ability. And I
Hmm.
think regardless of what your taste in music, you can, I've had friends over the years who don't really like the Edge's guitar playing, or they don't really like Bono for his political things, or
Yeah.
whatever criticisms you might throw at a particular band or you two in general. It's undeniable that they've reached the pinnacle of the business. They're still doing it after a
Oh yeah.
very long period of time. They've been very successful at it. So they are a model of success. They are a model of using what they've got to change the world. And I mean, I think that's back to the wizardry thing. I think all of us as artists are have a responsibility. I think that the wizard brought the magic to the town, but he also was kind of the medicine man, the healer, the, I think we bring a little bit of something special to the world. And you, as you said, it's your responsibility then to figure out what you do with it after that. And I admire those folks who can bring it together and then put it out there for a positive benefit for not just themselves but for the world.
Yeah, man. And I think, I mean, there's a huge pressure. Like when you think about, it's like you see, uh, throughout the course of history, obviously, it's like there's always like troubles and problems and stuff. But it's like, we're living through ours, and you see that, and it's like, well, what the hell can I do? Like I'm just, and for me, it was like, well, what can I do? Like, and it's not anywhere else. It's like, what can I help with around me right now, and who can I help around me right now? And so I think that when you can do that, it takes that pressure off that world thing. And in U2's case, right, it was like their snapshot of what was happening in their world at that time, and to be able to grow from something like that to Bono being like this like world traveling, like more than just like philanthropist, you know what I mean? Like just, drawing attention to issues, and like advocating for causes and stuff like that. It like starts with just looking around you, right? Like that's the first step,
Yeah.
to hopefully growing to a place. But it's like, if that intention is there, and you're able to affect the people in your vicinity in a positive way, like that doesn't that feeling can't get old, like, and then hopefully that thing just kind of grows, hopefully that circle grows, and um you know influence of positive, change can kind of, infiltrate different places in different ways, and so that's the goal.
Yeah. I think you're a living example of that, man. You're really helping your community, and you're doing it in a super cool way with the skills and talents you have. And I think it's awesome. So I applaud you. What do you
I applaud you, sir. I applaud you.
well, what do you see yourself doing in the next year or two? And what's your vision for the next 5 to 10 years? What's on
Yeah.
the horizon?
I mean, like if we can continue doing like what we're doing for as long as possible, like we're gonna be psyched, to continue developing, and hanging with the artists that we have been family for years, but also meeting new people. Um, One of the things, and we've talked about this, like early on when this thought kind of started formulating of what this could be, it was like, you know, for to be able to develop and kind of get some people out there from this area that then younger people can look at and say, oh, this thing that I love isn't impossible, because that, this guy that's in front of me, is able to do that thing. That has always been the goal. It's like, what can we do that can soak into the soil and continue this thing that can, you know, through osmosis almost, like rubbing off like on, inspiration for other people. So it would be such a cool thing for us, and trying to get it off the ground, but to be able to do like some kind of school of rock performance thing here in town that can draw all of these different facets of entertainment and art kind of together, like in a place that can be a resource for anybody, but like really kind of focus in on middle school, high school age kids that have this notion. And especially with kind of like the diminishing of like arts and stuff and like public schools, it's like, for me, that's one of the reasons why I love going to school. And like when that thing's taken away, it's like, what the hell am I doing here? Like,
Yeah.
so to be able to provide that thing and hang with local schools and get like, find those people that are interested in that thing and kind of help shape that would be a really cool thing to be doing in 5-10 years for sure.
I,
Hopefully
I
sooner. Hopefully
I
sooner.
applaud that. Yeah. No, that's great, man. That's excellent. I applaud that so much. As I might have told you, I led a band that was primarily young people for a couple of years,
Yeah.
and that I love that mission. I think that the music business mentorship kind of grew out of that experience, and um, certainly practicing law and seeing what people have done that causes a whole bunch of problems. My goal is to try to teach some folks so that they avoid all those problems.
Yeah.
And the target audience of this podcast and my courses and the coaching program is really the 19-year-old me. If
Yeah.
I could grab that kid who's just coming out of high school, you've kind of been forced to do this thing that your parents said to do for all these years, and now you're kind of at the cusp of adulthood. What are you going to do with your life? And I didn't want to do anything but play music. Now, I had to take a meandering journey to get where I am here, as I think a lot of us do. But if I could have the me of now talking to the me of then, I might have steered him in a little different direction. So I'm hoping to do that for others, and I can see that same spirit in you, and I know you will. I think it's really amazing.
I
Let's
appreciate
talk,
it.
if I can, if I just want to ask, because I've kind of asked this question of a lot of folks, and this will be our last question, then we'll wrap it up. But if you had a magic wand and you could solve any problem, either in the music business in general or in your particular music business,
Yeah.
what would you do with that power?
So in Hit the Lights, we got to experience a lot. Um the scene that we were in was the one, the stuff that we grew up listening to, the labels that like we dreamt of being on, like the types of bands. There was this like very grassroots DIY camaraderie thing where, you know, it it wasn't about record sales for like a label to keep like a band on a label kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like you didn't have to sell X amount of records. It was more of, just the love of the act and what they were doing. I think that as the band continued and like we kind of grew from that independent scene, and like you see like the true belly and nature of the beast, and it's like this thing that, you know like any industry, especially like in entertainment, you're really just kind of wringing out the talent until there's nothing else left, and then looking for the next person in line that's willing to sacrifice themselves to like these these gods that um that was something that was really discouraging for sure early on. And to see what that was, it was like, man, that's kind of not what we signed up for. It's like um So I think that, if I had like a magic wand, it would kind of figure out what's the way that you can do something like that sustainably, where you aren't really taking advantage of the artist, where the artist can survive, where the artist can, you know, thrive and not have to do things that they don't want to do, like, and can just live. And, I don't know what that is. I know that, like, as labels started losing money because of, Napster and LimeWire, and then like ultimately streaming, a lot of those guys at the top's paychecks never really diminished, right? It was like who can we get rid of here to make sure that my paycheck doesn't change. Then like the 360 deals started happening, where it's like, well, what else can we take? Like, it just seemed like nobody had the right idea to come in and save this thing, and like, do it like in a way with like integrity. And it just keeps snowballing to now this point where it's like somebody can have millions of streams and, get checks for 7 cents. It's like, wow. It's like, you really want these computers to start making this stuff for us or something, like, you just like want to figure out what's the easiest way to do it. So I mean, the coolest thing that can happen is somebody comes up with something, whatever that thing is, but you're the one with the magic wand scenario. So let me ask you, what is that?
Well, in many
How do you
ways,
save a burning ship?
yeah,
Like,
in many ways, the music business mentorship is here to help guide folks into having a self-sustaining creative career. And I think that one of the answers has to be in this day and age is diversification. And I think you've got to be able to understand and navigate the world of e-commerce so that you're focused every day on making a sale. As someone who ran a venue for a while, and dealing with business partners who just saw music as sort of a marketing expense, it was like they wanted to cut the cost, and yet we were saying no. We need to have a show on Tuesday night. We need to have a show on Monday night. We need to have shows every night because that's our brand, that's our mission, and it's the daily sales. If we can take a daily Tuesday from an $800 sale night to a $2,500 sale night because we put a band on the stage, and if the difference between what we made and what we had to pay the band was not, we netted more profit to bottom line it, then it's worth doing. And it's worth doing for a lot of different reasons. And it's worth doing because this is a diverse crowd, and the Monday night crowd is different than the Tuesday night crowd. And it's a community that you're building, and building that community on a daily basis is really what helps sustain an individual artist. So you may say, well, I don't really want to do the TikToks. I really don't want to do as many Instagrams. But ultimately, it's just creating a pathway for that exchange of energy. So if your thing is to do a particular style of song, and maybe there's only so much you can put out of that kind of content. Well, maybe utilize your TikTok platform to do something in a humorous way, or to switch it up so that you're using Instagram for more graphic design stuff, but you're staying within the value system and the ecosystem of your brand and your artist brand. And also, I think thinking about things like a brand or a message, and trying to continually foster that. I think it's easier when you have a purpose. Like,
yeah.
To the Bono example, like, if everything that he does is focused on being a better band and putting out a better song, and then using that song to convey a message of peace and hope and love and a better world, it becomes easier to kind of do the heavy lifting of, okay, well, I've got to put out another Instagram post today. And I think that, creating this conscious career in a world where, yes, the streaming revenues are drying it up, you've got to shift to another avenue of making your money. And that is direct to fan sales is never going to go away. And,
Yeah.
using these platforms, if your whole goal is to just get TikTok famous or to get 1 million streams on Spotify, you're not aiming at a higher purpose. And
Yeah.
someone out there listening might say, well, that's easy for you to say, you're not doing it. You're a lawyer, well, that's just an example of my own diversification, because I still play guitar. I still write songs. I still produce tracks. I have songs rep by agencies, and I'm still trying to pitch them for ads, TV, and film. I'm now trying to teach other people how to do that. Meanwhile, I'm doing it myself. So
proof's in the pudding. It's like,
yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
I don't pretend that this business is easy. It's not easy. If you want to be in where money, making money is your goal, then go into finance or banking where they have all the money already. If you want to be an artist where you synthesize the world around you and you convey a message and you maximize your skills and talents in the service of your community, that a community that you created, a tribe that you are the leader of, you've just got to take on some of these responsibilities you may not have wanted to, or may not even have imagined that you did. But there's no substitute for creating that connection one-on-one with a fan. And
definitely. And I think that that's the coolest thing about, like the technology that we do have nowadays, is the way that you are able to go out there and find that community and build that community, and like, but I also miss like the weirdness of like the 80s and like the 90s, like where you didn't know, like what like Frank Black, like the singer of the Pixies, was eating for breakfast. You didn't even know what the Pixies looked like, like unless like you saw like a press photo and some grainy like, like zine or something like that, like so like there, it's such like a necessary thing to be able to continue, but like there's some mystery like thing that's like kind of like unveiled about like maybe it's too much of that accessibility, like maybe that's like what it is.
well,
But
I think there's something to be said for reserving something for yourself and for your
yeah,
family. I mean, I think ultimately we all understand, and as future generations will understand, that the social media world is just a carefully curated vision of yourself that you're projecting to the world.
yeah,
It's not necessarily who you really are, and getting trapped in thinking that's who you really are can lead to overinflated egos and some problems if you take it
dude,
the wrong way.
and I mean that's gonna be such a great like packet of advice to include in the stuff that you're doing, and it's like constant reminders of that thing so that people don't get swept up into the synthesized version of themselves and then like lose touch with the reality, and like but also have the confidence to get out there and put themselves out there in a way that like isn't icky and feels like it could be very like honest and genuine. So it's a tightrope walk for sure.
It
Like,
really is, but there's a double-edged sword to sort of everything that we're talking about here with the whole social media world and the place that we are. There's a New York Times article that just came out. It was an editorial piece where the writer was saying that there's been the lowest number of albums and new movies, and a lot of movies that we see now are rehashes of older ideas. Even this brilliant Barbie movie is really taking a concept that's much older and repackaging it for a new generation. But I think that that there is a lot of creativity going on in the social media world, and I think that it sort of hasn't been codified by some of the people who look at numbers of albums released. I think that all the daily creativity and the micro creativity that goes into creating and curating your own profile is an opportunity. I think, like, yes, streaming numbers have gone down, but it's also an opportunity to discover stuff, because in days gone by in the 80s, you would only see an album on the shelf for a limited amount of time unless it was selling. Then it would just go out and you wouldn't be able to find that anywhere. So now you can kind of find the body of world's knowledge and the world's music at your fingertips on your phone, which is a tremendous opportunity for growth and culture and all that. But it does take a certain sort of sophistication to kind of say, all right, I'm not the person that I'm putting myself out there to be but a certain amount of that is authentic, and the
Yeah.
authenticity does engage with fans, and there's a balance between authenticity and familiarity breeds contempt. Like, you don't want to see what my hair looks like in the morning. My wife tells me I have three looks. I've got the look right out of the shower, there's the look when I wake up, the look out of the shower, and then the look after my hair kind of has softened for a while for the day. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but the look that I spend 8 hours every night curating with
Yeah.
my hair, that's probably not on social media very often. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
I spent a
Yeah.
lot of time working on that hairstyle
Yeah,
just for one,
man.
an audience of one, my
I
wife.
I feel like you're coming up with some really engaging content though, if you showed the different stages.
I might have to. I might have to. But as I think about this, there's a band that I'm going to have on the podcast called the Crutches, and they're from Chagrin Falls, Ohio. They
Okay.
at least claim to be,
Yeah.
because they're all animated. Their entire persona
I
is
love it. I
animated.
love it, man. That's
Yeah.
insane. That's so cool. Like,
So it's like it's taking a real band and then projecting their vision of, and they're all cartoon characters. So,
dude, like I want to meet the person who's birthing this idea, because you know what I mean? Like, that stuff's exciting,
yeah.
like I was having a conversation with Dave yesterday. We were watching some stuff on YouTube, and something this like concert film made by this artist whose name is Dijon. Um 25-minute long, like live concert thing. Took the concept of like a live concert footage thing and just completely flipped it on its head in just like this way that we were just like floored by. And you know I was like thinking, because of being on the inside of making something like this, what the dynamic is with like the idea, the person that has to go to somebody else to tell them how this crazy idea, it's like, I don't know if this is going to work, and that person being like, F it, let's do it anyway, let's see what happens, and like, man, like that's the kind of stuff that like just gets me going. When somebody's like, I got this crazy idea, I'm like, let's do it. Like, you don't even know what the idea is, like, I don't care, let's do it. Like, that kind of concept is stuff that I love. So like, I genuinely love hearing some crazy cool ideas like that. Like, and I want to know that person. I want to know what makes them tick. I want to know what gives them the gall to think that they can do that. Because through that inspires me to like, really follow those crazy ideas when I have them. So I love that. Please
Well,
send me that stuff. I would
yeah,
love
I will. The crutches.official on Instagram is hailing from Chagrin Falls, Ohio. The band consists of Rigby Stone, Elliot Rooster, Arthur, Duke, Oswald, Cannon, Doc, and they are an animated band. And they
Wait, is Doc just like single name, just Doc? Like, every like, is that one person? Like,
there's three people, and
okay,
Duke, Oswald, Cannon
okay,
is
okay, okay.
Doc,
Okay,
DOC.
okay,
So
okay. I thought like everybody had like, first and last names, and then just Doc is the drummer.
yeah,
Like
it's
Cher.
Rigby, Rooster, and Doc are the folks in the band. It's
I love
it's
it.
a it's a great concept. It really is. I've heard some of their music. It seems pretty cool.
Yeah.
But we're not here necessarily to talk about them. We're here to talk about you and your stuff. What is the next thing? Tell me when the next block party is, and the next event at the Legacy Arts Center, and how often do you do them? And let's put in a plug for
Yeah,
what
for
you've got
sure.
coming out.
So Legacy Arts, we throw this party every year on Main Street, Lima, Ohio, USA. We just celebrated our fourth one. Great acts, great attendance. It's like one of those things where it's like, you know, you you put in the work, you do the thing, and like it's through just the continued occurrence of that people start trusting it, like it's like, okay, like, we see your name now, okay, like we know that this is something worth coming out to. And it's really just about putting on the type of party that we would want to go to, kind of selfishly. Like, we're using these resources to book bands that we love, to curate artists that we love, to, like, even with like food and drink and other programming that kind of goes on. It's just like, this is the type of thing that we want to experience. So let's do that, and let's find the same people that are into the same stuff. And it's been really cool to be able to continue that. So next year, next September, look out for the Legacy Art Street Party. It's like gonna be 2024. Yeah. It's gonna be
Yeah.
2024 next year. So
Amazing. Yeah.
yeah. So in terms of the venue here, the bar, Purple Feet, is actually going to be moving into the back. So once that happens and that gets settled, then we are going to figure out what the events are going to be going on back there. But in terms of looking out for releases from Rustgaze, Kevin Ashba's got Elevated single coming out, I believe November 3rd. Um, Two singles coming out on deck from Jasmine Gore. DL Burden, we are going to have at least an EP coming out, I'd say by springtime next year. And then all the fun people that we're meeting along the way that are coming out of the woodwork. So definitely check us out and follow these artists. You are not going to be upset that you did. And yeah, come hang out in Lima. If look us up, Legacy Arts Building, 230 North Main Street, probably here. Ask for Omar. I'm in my dusty little corner of the universe, and come hang out.
That's amazing, man. It really is. You've got a really great thing going on, Omar. I love it. I particularly love all the music you just mentioned, and I really do enjoy whether it be an indoor hang at the space in the back of the building there, or the street party, which I have yet to make it to, but I want to. I'm planning to put that on my calendar, so that's something for September of next year. But my hat's off to you, man. It's really cool, really great stuff. And thanks very much for being on the Music Business
Dude,
Mentorship podcast.
anytime, man. Thank you, John. Seriously, like, this is anytime that we just have a chance to chat it up and catch up is really special. But the fact that hopefully there's been some little nugget of truth or something in here that somebody picks up on, that allows them to continue doing what it is that they're doing, and allows them to grow, and to be a part of that's really cool. So honestly, whatever we can do, please let
Thanks,
us know.
man.
Of
I
course.
appreciate it.
Of course, brother.